This is the 51st run of a game ball between the two campuses, so we're excited. Looking forward to a great game tomorrow night. And Colonel Tillman, thank you very much for all the effort that your group's put into this.
Thank you for the support and allowing us to get this tradition to continue, and mostly to the cadets who are running this ball today. Sir, we'll get it down to the stadium safely.
There's a lot of like pomp and circumstance around this rivalry, which I think is what makes it so great. And of course, you play it's a trophy game.
It's the best. College football is the best. The tradition here with the boot and the border war here, we're right next to them right here. That's what makes college football great, and the energy level that buzzes in these rivalry games. You don't forget them for the rest of your life. And it's time for us to go win this game. We got to talk to our kids about what it's going to take to beat this football team. They're going to come in here and try to bloody your nose. That's the way it is. And we got to stand back up to them. We got to fight.
On behalf of both our OTC programs, the game ball for tomorrow's Border War is here.
Awesome. Great tradition. Glad we're able to do it again this year, too.
Go Rams, big
Go Rams. Go Rams.
Go Rams.
Woo. Goosebumps, man.
Yeah, this is really is what college football is all about. These rivalry games, man. It's just phenomenal.
Shout out to Colorado State Athletics for letting us use that as the intro video. I think it was just good for, getting those border war juices flowing, setting the mood, setting the tone. 112th meeting all time between these two programs.
Incredible.
Longest consecutive rivalry game west of the Mississippi. Wow. It does not get better than this. Andre,
1899, the first one, right?
Yeah, man. Like that's insane. Just even thinking about that. This football game is being played longer than the Industrial Revolution.
Yeah, no, that's incredible. I mean, sports-wise in this country, there are a few things that go back as far as, college football and these kind of really original rivalries. So it's a great thing. I'm getting psyched, and it's kind of a new chapter in the border war with Steve Adazio taking his first step into this. Yeah,
a much-needed new chapter, I would say. The last 4 years, obviously, Mike Bobo, he did win in 2015 up in Laramie pretty dominantly, actually. One of the better CSU performances against Wyoming in the last decade or so. But the last 4 years, man, Wyoming's kind of punched him in the mouth, and it's been tough for CSU fans. So I think this is a big prove-it game for the Rams because it's, it's just, it's that opportunity to finally just bring some excitement, bring some joy back to the program. And that's what's been missing, that's what's been lacking. Yeah. And it's tough to blame folks, when you don't win a rivalry game for half a decade, when you have entire generations of students going through CSU, never once experiencing the high of winning the border war, that's what you're going to get.
And on the Wyoming side, they were in the same exact situation just 4 years ago when CSU was the hot program in the Mountain West. Jim McElwain just going to Florida, ranked program, pumping out pros left and right. Shaq Barrett, Capri Bibbs, Garrett Grayson, Ty Sambrilo, all those guys. That was when the Rams were on a 4-year-in-a-row streak, and Wyoming had to turn things around. They get their new coach in Craig Bull. And Justin, you've talked about this all along. The Steve Adazio hire, if there was maybe a way to frame it and sell it, it's that he's kind of CSU's version of Craig Bull.
Totally. I mean, that's what they were going for, bring that smash mouth identity back to Fort Collins. That's how Sonny Lubick teams won. Like,
yes,
it was a lot of fun doing the flashy recruiting stuff under Bobo. All that was great. But guess what? It didn't translate to wins, not when it mattered most, at least. If you're not winning bowl games, if you're not beating Wyoming, if you're not competitive against CU, Boise State, there's no point. There really isn't. I mean, it's great to beat Utah State. It's great to beat the Nevadas or, UNLVs of the world. But these are the games that matter. These are the ones that people remember. And these are the games that define your identity.
Absolutely. And in a year 2020 where we've been starved for sports, from a greater perspective, the college football scene locally has been starved so much of those old great rivalries we grew up on with all this conference realignment. You don't get the Rams against BYU anymore, who was, kind of the big bad wolf out in the WAC back in the day, or all those old Big 8 rivalries. You got up in Boulder and what have you. This is kind of, this and Air Force are kind of some of the few OG rivalries you still have, and to kind of, still the season's just starting, but it really feels like the Rams are already at a key juncture in their season after that tough loss against Fresno with so many different factors. They weren't at 100%. So hopefully we get to see more of what the real Rams will be under Adazio and for the rest of the year.
I don't like to use the phrase must win game because it just gets thrown out far too often. There are very few games that are actually must-win games. Game 7s are a must-win game because if you lose, your season's done.
Right.
Your season's not done if you lose tonight. But after the start that you had against Fresno State, you already lost a home game against New Mexico. Yeah. You only have 3 opportunities in your home stadium to win, and those matter, especially right now in the wonky COVID world with travel. You don't have to be cooped up in some crappy Fresno hotel room, for 12 hours leading up to the game. It's Fort Collins. You're familiar. Yeah. These are the games that matter most. And especially with Boise just around the corner, man, a deflating performance really, I think could take the life out of the program before, we even really got going.
Well, and it's been, I can't think of a coach that's had a much harder start to a tenure than what Adazio has dealt with, and to some extent is guilty of putting himself into certain situations, if you will. But already the hire wasn't seen in the biggest light, and then kind of back-to-back scandals, if you will. Correct me if I'm misframing that. And then the season finally starts, a tough season for everyone, not how you would like it. And to add insult to injury, putting Patrick O'Brien in when the game was already out of reach, a move that's really hard to explain, was justified up to the first three quarters if you said, well, it's maybe more valuable to integrate Centeio, kind of see what the offense looks without him. O'Brien didn't get the reps. He's missing some of his best playmakers anyways. Let's just ride it out. And then to make that late. So it's nothing but building up bad feelings. Boy, a win like this against the Cowboys would be just phenomenal in switching that momentum for the program.
That's the nice thing about games like this, Yes, there's a lot at stake. If you don't live up to the expectations, the fans are going to be flaming stuff at you on Twitter immediately. It gets real ugly real quick. But the beautiful thing is it's in a racer, it's a giant rubber eraser. Yes. If you win this game, nobody's talking about Fresno State for the rest of the season. No longer matters. Who cares? Because guess what? You beat Wyoming.
Yep, that's absolutely right. That's right. That's the beauty of rivalry games, right? Your record and everything, how you're recruiting, all that matters. But you build a lot of good feelings with just one rivalry game win will do a lot for you.
I'm kind of curious, Trey. As somebody that follows the Mountain West pretty closely, you follow all of college football, so it's not like you can watch every Mountain West game under a microscope, but CSU, Wyoming, these are 2 programs that you're pretty familiar with. Mm-hmm. What do you like about this matchup for CSU? What do you dislike?
Yeah, that's, let's start with what I like. I really think that with Patrick O'Brien starting in this game, hopefully with a fuller cast of playmakers in that passing game around him, that's a question for you that I want to get into a little more. Given how Wyoming's defense started off the season getting torched by Nevada, and even the times when Hawaii was passing the ball, I think it's easy to be really low on the Rams' chances because you look at how well a Hawaii team who looked kind of nice in their opener, how they got dismantled by Wyoming doesn't give you much optimism. But then when you go and watch that game, it was a wacky game. Hawaii faced an absurd amount of 3rd and longs. It was just ridiculous. Yeah. So that didn't play into their game plan at all. Hawaii, it's always a tough one to predict how the Rainbow Warriors will play on the road. So kind of throw that out. But even as bad as Hawaii was, I thought they found some real holes in that Wyoming secondary. 2020, as someone who looks at college football as a whole, and even from a betting perspective has been disastrous for college secondaries.
It's so hard.
Everyone is wide open. The best way to stop the pass is hope the other team you're facing doesn't have a good passing quarterback. Sadly for Wyoming, they're finding a good passing quarterback. So that is the matchup I like the most that favors the Rams. And I think, you got to win that in a major way. This has to be a 200 plus passing yard advantage for the Rams for them to really even the playing field, because there'll be other matchups that we'll get into that I don't like as much. So that's really their big advantage where they need to maximize that.
I think that's a great point. You know what you're going to get out of that Wyoming front seven. They're going to try and punch you in the mouth. I don't see a situation where it's going to be easy rushing. The last 2 years, CSU has not been able to run the football against Wyoming at all. It's been abysmal. Yeah. And, I will say, I do think that I think you'll see a little bit more potent rushing attack from CSU than you've seen in years past. But it does, it all comes down to what you can do over the top. Can you get this Wyoming team so that they're playing on their feet a little bit? Because if they're able to pin their ears back and just come at you and, send pressure when you pass and shut down your run game, it's just going to be so hard. The one thing I will say, I'm glad you brought up that Nevada game, because as weird as that game was for Wyoming, the one thing that it really showed you, this is a team that has no quit in them whatsoever. They were completely deflated. Emotionally, you saw they lost their starting quarterback the third play of the game. That's brutal. CSU fans know that all too well with Colin Hill, what that feels like. And you kind of saw it with the defense. They weren't as sharp. They were missing plays that they never miss under Craig Bull. Right. And then all of a sudden that second half, particularly the fourth quarter into that OT period, they flipped the switch and they carried that on into Hawaii, who they, the game was much closer than the score indicates. They pulled away late, but they were pretty dominant in that game.
They were, absolutely. And then getting more specific into that passing matchup, I love Trey McBride. We can talk a lot about what CSU is missing. Yeah. As far as Warren Jackson and guys that have moved on, on the defensive line, where I worry about that disadvantage in the trenches. But Wyoming has lost one of their best defenders for a long time. A guy like Logan Wilson hasn't come through that program in a while. A Wyoming guy through and through, the soul, the heart and soul of that defense. They don't have him anymore. They've got Chad Muma, very good linebacker from Lone Tree, Colorado, local kid that CSU and others let get away. But McBride is going to really test him. And, Dante Wright, please give me some news on that. That's another matchup where you can exploit this younger group of Wyoming linebackers in the passing game, and that'll make up for what you're missing on the outside.
It's a great point. Dante Wright, Ty McCulloch, both will be in the lineup tonight.
Beautiful.
We will see, what kind of reps do they get? How active are they in the offense? How many snaps are they getting? We got to remember, Dante didn't even get cleared until the Friday after that Fresno State game. So he's basically had a week of practice after missing a couple of weeks. He's young, I imagine he'll be fine. But, that could be a factor. He may not necessarily be playing, 70 plus offensive snaps. It might be more like 45, 50, just because there's some stuff that he probably hasn't been there for from an install perspective. But I think you're spot on. They have to hit Wyoming over the top. O'Brien probably has to throw multiple passing touchdowns in this game, unless you're like pitching a shutout or something like that. But I think it all comes down to that passing offense.
Yeah, 100%. And hopefully, while Dante hasn't been there on the install, they've already worked on a few different Dante packages, which you could unleash, just having that extra speed element out the backfield. Back to your point, though, I did like what I saw from CSU from a running perspective. What Centeio packages will you have to run it on the Cowboys? Kind of dish them out a dose of their own medicine. I also was encouraged. It's very early, but I was encouraged by just how that CSU line looks. They look more athletic. They look more just compact, not as sloppy, and that bodes really well for the run blocking side. That's another one where CSU is going to be at a disadvantage. As much of that gap as you can close on the ground game is going to be huge for them tonight.
The O-line's, it's the foundation of everything. I know, it kind of becomes a cliche with CSU fans, and the Lubick years. Well,
it's true, man.
they did it right during the Lubick years, and during the Lubick years, they had some nasty offensive lines, and they came out and they punched you in the mouth. They ran the football successfully. I mean, it wasn't pro style passing offenses lighting people up down the field under Sonny. I mean, Moses Moreno, pretty good passing quarterback, but for the most part, it's the BVPs of the world and
absolutely
killing you on the ground. So I'm going to be very, very interested to see what happens there. You mentioned some matchups that you dislike for CSU. What don't you love going into this game from the Rams' perspective?
I just praised the O-line, but I think this is a massive test in pass protection, and we're not going to be able to get to those playmakers. O'Brien isn't going to be able to toss it for 400-plus yards like Nevada did if the O-line can't hold up in pass pro. Wyoming, man, they are getting pressure up front. They're getting pressure with 4 and 5 guys. I have it right here. Their last 2 games, 5 sacks, 7 tackles for a loss against Hawaii, who got obliterated, 3 sacks and 8 tackles for a loss against Nevada. These guys are living behind the line of scrimmage, can't set up in 3rd and long. That's where the run game is going to, it has to be 3rd and manageable. You have to move the sticks on 1st and 2nd down, be aggressive, take some shots so that you're not facing a lot of 2nd and long, 3rd and long. But yeah, that's a match in the trenches in general. This is who CSU wants to be. Wyoming's had years to build that, and they have a huge advantage in the trenches on both sides of the ball. How much can CSU hold up? I'm concerned about that defense, Justin.
I'm not quite as concerned about the defense as maybe other people are. I will say the secondary, especially in 3rd and long, really, really concerning. CSU gave up 10 3rd down conversions against Fresno State. 5 of them were 3rd and long or longer. Now, Adazio brought up, Hainer did a really good job of improvising, buying time, and given that Chuck Heater, the defensive coordinator, he likes to play aggressive. It's a lot of man stuff. It's a lot of zero help. It's pretty tough if you have to cover in those scenarios for 5 to 6 seconds. So, if you're playing aggressive, you got to get after the quarterback, or you don't have the corners to hang with a man all night. I think that's going to be a tough situation. The benefit, though, you're not really playing in an elite passing offense, so maybe that gives you an opportunity to kind of load the box a little bit and try and make Wyoming a little bit more one-dimensional.
Right. And I mean, when you're such a run-heavy team as Wyoming's going to be, all it takes is one play where you hold them to, 0, negative, or just a couple yards. Next thing you know, they don't have that rhythm. They're going to be uncomfortable having to pass the ball. What you can't have from CSU is all the missed tackles we saw in the back 7 last week. Cannot do that against these Cowboys. That means an extra 1st down conversion. That means an extra 2 minutes off the clock. That means an extra 2 minutes where you're getting worn down, and then you're going to feel it in the 4th. So, those losses have incremental consequences as you let them come. This is a big physical O-line from Wyoming. They like to get downhill. They're going to come at you on pull blocks. They're going to have 2 blocks in a gap to try and get you downhill. That means that speed from CSU, and it's there. It is there on defense. Got to beat those big guys on the move. Got to beat him to his spot. Don't allow him to square you up and block you in space. Beat him to his spot. Force those 0, 1, 2 negative gains. Take them out of their rhythm. That's going to be huge. Can't miss tackles, though, and I'm concerned that there's a bit of a lack of size on that D-line. And against that kind of Wyoming O-line, they get an early lead, and they can keep doing what they want to do. That is extremely concerning.
Yeah, that's another position group that I'm going to be interested to see. There were some experienced guys that missed last week. It was another position group along with the wide receivers where they had to deal with some quarantine stuff. So, it can, Devin Phillips, Ellison Hubbard, some of these guys get into the lineup. What are they able to do? These are experienced players that have played a lot of downs. So that's definitely going to be a big factor. I think that's a great way to kind of transition into what my keys to the victory are for CSU. 3rd down in particularly, because look, defensively, they could not get off the field on 3rd down last week, and they couldn't stay on the field on 3rd down offensively. Doesn't take a genius to understand that is not a recipe for success.
That's right.
Yeah, move the chains,
Right.
keep the other offense off the field. You
Yeah.
do that, you're going to have a pretty good chance to win the game. Hello? You
Yeah.
play to win the game.
Damn straight. Yeah. Yeah, no, got to move the chains. I mean, Craig Bull, Steve Adazio, they want to grind it out. This is a grinded out rivalry. Yeah, got to do that.
Second key to victory. I think you're going to have to force some turnovers. For CSU, I'm guessing if you force 2+, you give yourself an opportunity. Now, that could be easier said than done, especially given I don't expect Wyoming to come out and throw the football all over the place. You're not going to face 40 pass attempts unless you get up a big lead and they have to throw or something.
Right.
So force fumbles, do what you got to do. You got to make some plays, do something, whether it's creating turnovers, causing havoc on special teams, do something to flip the momentum in your favor and, put yourself in a position so you're not playing from behind.
Yeah.
Last key, and this is another obvious one. If you're watching this and you're saying, no, duh, sometimes football is a simple game.
Yeah.
Execute in the red zone. 3 trips inside the 12-yard line last week. Only came away with 3 points. Not going to get it done. Simple as that. You got to score touchdowns. I liked that they were aggressive. I liked that they went for it. They didn't get it done.
And a bit of a problem striking the right balance on offense, I felt, in the last game.
Agreed.
You get down early, you've got a running quarterback. It's not an ideal situation. With your passing quarterback, it's going to be great to lean on him, but strike that balance. Don't lean on him too much, and force Wyoming wants to be one-dimensional. Force them to be two-dimensional. It's going to have to be a high-scoring game, I think, for the Rams to get into it. And on the turnovers, forcing the turnovers is key, but if you're going to be the team that has to outpass these guys by 200+ yards, you have to take care of the football. It's huge.
Great point. Yeah, don't turn it over yourself. Win the turnover battle would have been a better way to phrase that key to victory. Don't turn it over yourself. Force turnovers on defense. Those are going to be the main factors, obviously. Before we get going here, I'm curious, from a betting perspective, is there anything that jumps out about this game to you? Currently a 3-point spread. I believe you took Wyoming in the staff picks.
I did. Now, we should... First off, when I do the staff picks on Twitter, if I pick against the home team almost always pulls off the big upset. So this is actually really big news for Rams fans. You are welcome. Wyoming. I'm an in the trenches kind of guy. I'm also a Patrick O'Brien guy. I'm probably the highest on Patty OB on the staff, so I want to see big things from him. But I just think it's a bit of a state of flux for the Rams right now, and I like the Cowboys. I think +3 might even be generous without a crowd here. I have some stats for you. 70% of the money is on Wyoming, but only 73% on the bets. Maybe that 2%. The sharps are seeing something here on the Rams, who are decent value as a +125 favorite. But I think if you're a Rams backer and maybe you're not ready to get your heart broken in this one, but you're rooting for the Rams, I think the safest bet is the over here, over 54. I don't think the Rams are going to be great defensively. I think, you can find some turnovers. You can stall a couple drives and take that rhythm out. But I think for the most part, Wyoming's going to put up some points. And I think the Rams need to do their own thing on offense and really torch that terrible secondary. I think a shootout would mean the Rams are in it, would benefit the Rams. That's the kind of game they want to be in, not a ground control game where Wyoming gets up early, can pin their ears back on defense, force more turnovers, run the ball 90% of the time, and then the under will hit, and that's a Cowboys one.
Interesting. I my DraftKings pick of the week was
like the under. Yeah.
And part of that is the history. If you look at the game between these two the last couple of years, not a lot of points scored. It's it is a physical it's a physical matchup. I think you have two teams that are, if they're doing what they want, is run the football and control possession, not necessarily, big strike, big plays all the time.
Right.
I just talked about CSU is going to need some of that.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I don't really see it. I see more like a grinded out 20-13 type game. maybe not necessarily the sexiest game to watch if you're a casual fan, but I think it's going to be one of those classic CSU Wyoming. It comes down to the fourth quarter, grind it out until the end.
You really think the Rams D have that in them to grind it out? You don't think this is a 2020 over special where both these teams were reminded like, oh yeah, it is just their third game this season?
Half a decade of losing does something to you, Andre. People forget they were in the game last year. They lost by 10, but it essentially came down to Bobo's decision to kick a 60-yard field goal in like 8-degree weather, which I've talked about that enough this week. It makes me so mad every time I think about it. And they went for it early on 4th and short, didn't get it, and Wyoming was able to capitalize. I think this defense CSU has is better than their defense last year. I know it didn't necessarily show it in that first game against Fresno,
Sure.
and I think a lot of that was because of the lack of training camp. I think the tackling is going to be better because I do think the talent is there.
Right.
But it's going to be interesting. Like people can call me a homer, but it's been 5 years. I haven't picked CSU in a couple of years in this game. I'm taking the Rams in the upset narrowly. Patrick O'Brien leads them down the field, game-winning drive. Trey McBride, I'm calling it now. Trey McBride scores the game-winning touchdown. CSU wins.
Love it. Wish we could bet on player props.
I know. Come on now.
Rams have the kicking advantage because you talking about that makes me think of back to 2017. Wyoming in the snow hit a couple absurd field goals to keep Josh Allen and the Cowboys in a 17-16 just narrow win for the Cowboys.
I mean, I don't want to get big cocky about the kicker position yet, but
please do.
He looked good against Fresno State. It's easy to kick in Fresno, but it's supposed to be a clear night, so it's not going to be a frozen tundra or anything like that. It's supposed to be, low 50s. Should be fine.
Well, there you go. If you're feeling good about the kicker, maybe just maybe that +3 is worth the sprinkle. No, I'm just feeling an overs game. Well, I'll be interested to see who's right about that.
Me too, man. Well, Andre, I got to get over to the stadium. I'm excited. First college football game I'll be covering in person in almost a year. Wow. Which is absolutely insane. But thank you for doing this. This was a lot of fun. We're going to be back, more throughout the season.
Yeah.
Fight on, you stalwart Ram team.